Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have Wendy Born, who's all the way from Melbourne in Australia. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Julian. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to have you on the show, and we had a really nice chat before we got on here. But I want to tell the audience a little bit about you. You are an engaging facilitator, and I certainly say that you are incredibly engaging in our conversation already.
Thank you.
You're a coach, you're a speaker, and author. You work with executives and senior leaders and leadership teams to create sort of high performance in organizations that deliver that wow factor. And you've got more than 25 years of experience in the corporate and management roles. You're also a certified coach, and you've launched 2 books. We're going to be looking at one of them today, which is all about raising leaders. And I guess the direction of our conversation today will be looking at how we can use the principles of parenting to become a great leader, and using those aspects into our day-to-day leadership roles. But before we get into that, I just want to ask, as I ask all my guests, what do you love about what you do?
Oh, that's easy. The best thing that I love about what I do is actually talking to people and hearing all their amazing stories, because everybody has such incredible stories, and to listen to them and get them to share them with you is just a privilege, and it's the best part of my job. I really love it.
Yeah. Brilliant. And have you always been in that environment of helping people and working with people to achieve their sort of goals?
Yes, over the years. In the last 6 or so years, I've been actually formally coaching. But as I look back over my career in corporate, I was actually coaching in an informal capacity, and helping people to kind of get what they want out of their career and sometimes their personal life as well, which is really, it's rewarding. It's a great job to have.
So you've written this book this year, Raising Leaders, and it's taking the sort of parenting approach and bringing that into, or the principles, I should say, and bringing that into leadership. I suppose I want to understand really, the sort of what got you to those parallels, and then how have you used that in the context of leadership?
Well, it's interesting. Over the years, I've always been fascinated with leadership, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and more so in the last even 12 months to watch leaders around the world has been quite fascinating. But then I had my own family as well, and I've been raising my 2 kids, which I've got 2 teenagers, which is, an interesting experience in itself. And it's funny, I would go to work and feel and have conversations with my people that was very similar to the conversations I was having with my kids. And there was a bit of deja vu throughout those 2 roles. And then I started to kind of formulate these principles which apply to both experiences. And what I found was that the 2 are very relatable experiences. So we all know when we see great leadership, and we all know when we see bad leadership. And we can all relate to parenting either because we've got our own kids, or, we've been raised by parents. And so as we get older, we can see, what our parents went through, and so we can relate to both experiences. And then I started to say to people, I'm thinking about writing a book about the similarities between parenting and leading people. And I would always get, oh, yeah. And so that's when I kind of knew I was onto something. So, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And just staying with the parenting bit, because just as I've been in an organization where, and you might be able to address this, because I think there's potentially people may have concerns about comparing parenting and leadership, not in the sense of the roles and how you explain it, but more the fact that treating employees like children.
Yes.
And we know that people have that sort of, I mean, I've been in organizations where there's been that parent-child relationship, which is, as we know, is very toxic, unhelpful, not effective, and not very dignified in that context.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure, and I know your book's not about that, but in terms of how do we help people to get away from that, or not using this as focused so much on parenting, they end up treating their employees like, you're like my teenager, but you're not. You're an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's right. And look, I'm not for a minute suggesting that our employees are like children, although some days you could kind of be forgiven. So, however, it's very much around applying similar principles that we have when we raise children, and you can apply them in the workplace, however, from a different angle almost. And, you're right. It's in my book, I talk about how people can often reflect different relationships that they have with parents or siblings in the workplace. So, for example, somebody might work for a senior male, and there might be almost like a father-son or a father-daughter kind of relationship playing out at work. Or similarly, if you have a colleague and, you were very competitive with your brother or sister, you could also apply that competitiveness with the colleagues that you work for. Does that all make sense?
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can, but I guess being aware of that is the first step in being able to manage it, really.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to people where they're perhaps they may be deemed the child in the organization, or the leader that's suddenly going into this mode of treating people like children, or sort of the parent-child? How would you get them to get to that more adult sort of relationships, I guess?
Yeah. So it's all about changing your response, because sometimes, in organizations, we respond from an adult-child perspective. So it's very much around responding from an adult perspective and helping the other person to respond from an adult perspective as well. And, sometimes that might be just an open, honest conversation around, we should approach our relationship differently, or we can build trust, work on building trust better, so that we can have more open and honest conversations.
Okay, so it's almost like I think I talked to Siobhan McHale recently. She talked about how they did some reframing in terms of their roles.
Yes.
And instead of telling everybody, this is what HR is about, they went on and just did it and used that sense of role modeling, in the sense of, and then people start to see, oh, that's what HR do, or they're doing something differently, but they're just doing it and they're not shouting about it. They're reframing their role and progressing. Yeah. And then the impact of, because we know that, role modeling, and you talk about it as well in your book, about is a powerful thing. And we know role modeling in parenting is scarily an impactful thing, and we have to be very mindful of it. But I think people forget about it sometimes in the workplace, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And as leaders, like parents, we are always on show, and our people are watching us all of the time that we are there. And they do what we do, and they say what we say. And, what you, as a leader, what you step over, you endorse, really. And so being conscious of what you're saying and what you're doing, and that the two are aligned, and our words, actions, and behaviours are consistent. And it's the same with parenting. How often have we heard our kids repeat back to us all those wonderful things we say, usually at the most inopportune time. And so it's exactly the same principle. Our kids are always watching us as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think our kids call us out more than people in the workplace, don't they? Because my kids do it all the time. Well, you said this the other day. Why are you? Anyway. And I think they're quite happily, because there's a relationship and obviously a safety and context, but it's interesting. Yes. So it's taking the parallels, or I could say the principles that you've identified in parenting. What are they, and how are they helpful to sort of bring into that sort of workplace?
Yeah. So there's 5 principles. The first one is love. So at the foundation of every family is love. And so we need to bring love into our work teams. But love at work is different to family love. And love at work is about connection with our people. It's about respect for one another. And it's also about forgiveness. You know, over the years, I've seen so many leaders find that they just can't forgive somebody for doing or making a mistake. And yet we readily forgive our kids all the time. And we need to apply that forgiveness at work as well, because that's how our people learn and grow and develop. And so, you know, it's an important part of love in our teams. The next one is environment. And, you know, we want our kids to have a happy and safe home environment. And the same applies at work. So we want not only a safe environment, but we also want psychologically safe environment, so that our people feel safe to raise their concerns, call us out when we're doing the wrong thing or we're doing inconsistent things. But it's also about setting expectations and consequences. So like we do with our kids, we set clear expectations, and if they don't meet that expectations, you know, there are consequences. And the same applies to the people that we lead. And so being clear on that is critical.
And just going on back onto that sort of psychological safety.
Yes.
What other ways can we create that? And obviously, the environment in the context of people are working a lot more from home as well.
Yeah.
And how do we create that environment that's still a working environment, but it's in our homes, which is slightly different. But also, how do we keep people psychologically safe in that context as well? So what are the things that you found from your conversations, but also for what you've learned over years?
Yeah. So at the very foundation of a psychologically safe team is trust. And if you don't have trust and solid trust in the relationships in your team, psychological safety will be difficult to get to. So my advice there is to build trust. Trust is an ongoing process. It's not an event. And so we, as leaders, we need to be conscious that we're constantly working at building trust with our people, both to our people and also within our teams, people to people. So, and, you know, you can do that through, I always recommend to my clients to find commonality between you and your people. So as we talk to our people, you know, when we find things in common, neurologically, that says to our brains, it says to us, you know, this person is like me. So if this person is like me, I can trust them. And so that's a really nice way to actually start to build trust. And, you know, vulnerability is also a really great way to build trust as well. And you know, people always, when I say vulnerability, they always kind of get frightened and run away. But, you know, you don't need to, you know, cry in front of your team members to be vulnerable. You can do that really nicely through sharing stories, you know, telling people where you've done something and you've failed or you've made a mistake and what you learned from it. And they're really nice, low vulnerability stories that help to actually increase trust as well.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something, that vulnerability is not about pouring out your guts and weeping all the time. It's being that sort of open transparency, but also sometimes, you know, we talk about, you know, Brené Brown talks about, you know, courageous leadership as being a vulnerable leadership, where you're stepping into that arena and you may be stepping into something where you're not entirely comfortable with, but actually by people seeing your vulnerability, seeing that you don't have it all together, you fail, you may have success, actually creates a real trust in this leader who they want to do. And I think trust, as you say, is vital. And building that. And it's not an event, because I think people do see it as an event. All right, I need to build trust. This is how I do it.
Yeah.
And like, I build rapport.
Yeah.
I've done that now. Actually, it's an ongoing process, because you can lose trust in a heartbeat.
You certainly can. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's, it doesn't take much to destroy trust. And once you have, it's a long road back.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's a precious thing, and it needs to be constantly in front of mind.
Yeah, and I think it's a thing that's forgotten sometimes in society, how big of an impact. And we all constantly are measuring the level of trust with, whether it's a government official, through to your next door neighbor, through to your child saying, "Oh, I didn't do that." There's trust things. We're constantly assessing it automatically.
Yes.
And I think if we know that people are, I guess it's this role modeling bit, and I don't know, going back, but it's the power of people just observing you. And I don't. There's a guy called Bandura who did the social learning theory, which is all about role modeling and how powerful people observe. Just by the subconscious, the values, everything comes across in what you see. So if you're saying something and there's a disconnect with the actual what you are really saying,
people can see it a mile away.
And people go, "It doesn't feel right," but I can't see it. What it is, but it doesn't feel right. It just feels disingenuous. Doesn't feel. There's no evidence in my sort of neurological sort of subconscious for that being trustworthy. And I think that's really vital, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. I talk about that in my first book, that, people, they can smell out, bullshit a mile away, really. And so, you don't want to stand in front of them and tell them, rubbish, because they will see right through you, and you'll lose their trust. And once you've lost their trust, as I said, it's a long road back.
Absolutely. No, that's good. So you've got love, we've got environment, which is key.
The next one is health. Yeah. And so, we want our kids to grow up healthy and happy. And we also want a physically and mentally healthy environment in our teams as well. And, research shows that there's a positive correlation between a health-focused workplace and engagement in our team, innovation as well, and also productivity. So making sure that we are healthy ourselves and we set the example for our people. And, it can be as simple as going home at 4:00 once a week, showing your people that, you're not there from, dusk till dawn or dawn till dusk. And you care about your physical health and your mental health, and leading the way, and also encouraging your people to do similar things as well. I used to work with a team who used to have lunch together once a week. So they would all bring in something healthy, and they'd sit around the table in the lunchroom and they would share a healthy meal together, which was, a really lovely thing to do.
That's really good. It's interesting because going on the whole well-being piece, some people think well-being is just about, I don't know, an organization, providing fruits or gyms, and they're all valid and they're really good. But there's something about, you took something that's quite the sociable side, where whether it's breakfast together or lunch together, or we all go out, and the sociability piece, because we're obviously social animals, and so we like being with people, and actually creating those contexts is really good for well-being, because also then you have those little side conversations, or people then pick up and share a bit more because they're building a relationship, trust, and then they start to say, I'm struggling with this at home, or really find working from home, and they start to help, and the team in that social context really does bind them together, and in terms of a well-being approach, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And, it's interesting, over the last 6 months since COVID all came about, I do some work with a group called Victorian Leaders, and we are a networking and educational group. And since COVID came in, we started to catch up online via Zoom every Friday afternoon at 4:00. And, we'd have a glass of wine or a beer, and we'd all kind of have a chat online for, about an hour. And what we found was that we were connecting more. Even though we were away from each other and it was all online, we had some of our members saying, "Oh, I feel more connected with this group than I did when we all met face to face."
Really?
So,
Interesting.
yeah. So, I wouldn't let your online stop you. I think you can still connect with people online. You just need to do it consciously.
Yes, there's got to be sort of an intent, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
And even within teams, I've encouraged lots of leaders to almost allow somebody who's a bit more of an advocate in your team to perhaps be the one that organizes it, in a sense of whether it's more sociable, whether it's more of a games, or just create those environments, and don't make it too formal. Make it quite relaxed, as you would going down to a restaurant or a pub. But having somebody in the team facilitate it, they'll canvas some reality of what they really want.
Yeah,
and
great
also
idea.
The whole peer-to-peer pressure creates a bit of well, so-and-so did it, and we can't really diss this because she's one of us in that sense. Not that there's an us and an M in leadership, but I think that's really important, because I had one leader who was almost becoming, I think it was almost like a midday thing. They were doing a catch up, trying to do water cooler type things.
Oh yeah.
And it started to become a bit of a bind, and it started to become a bit of a stress. People were not coming to it just because it was slightly forced. And I just said to her, why don't you just ask one of your team members who's more into the social side to do something, organize it. And they switched it to more of a once a week. I think they did it more towards the end of the week, more even having a glass of wine or something on a 4:00 on a Friday. So, and it started to create a little bit more of a vibe. And then also she was empowered them to do it, so she didn't have to be involved in organizing it.
Nice.
And then she could just turn up and actually be sociable as well, without a sense of, I've got a purpose, I'm the leader here. Just chat to people.
And that's right. And, by allocating it to other people, they feel more empowered as well. So I think that's a brilliant idea. I really do. Yeah, that's cool.
So what else? You got two more in terms of your principles.
Yes. So we've already touched on one a little bit. So the fourth one is language. And this is about making sure that our words, actions, and behaviours are always aligned. Because, as we said earlier, we're always on show, as we are as parents, and our people will repeat back the things that we do and the things that we say. And we may not be in the room, but it will be done. And same with our kids. So we've kind of talked on that. And the fifth one is around vision. So we want our kids to grow up and be well-functioning, normal, healthy adults. And so the same applies for our team. We need to have a vision, which is a plan for the team, and a vision that people understand and connect with. And also that they understand the purpose of the team and the purpose of the organisation and how the two connect. Because when we understand the purpose of the organisation, we're able to connect the work that we do on a daily basis to the long-term vision. And this is about very much around using plain language like we do with our kids. Also, plain and simple everyday language at work. Don't bombard them with great big long words, and keep things very simple, but also able to paint the picture for the future.
And it's having that vision of the future, isn't it? That obviously a brighter future, something to aim for. And whether you call it vision, mission, purpose, they're the ones that it keeps you rooted. And we've had a year where your vision may still be valid, and there may be some tweaks on it. But your how and your timing is somewhat changed. But as long as you can, and I always talk about this not in resilience, as long as you keep mindful of that purpose and keep an eye on that. Yes, you might have some boulders and some things in the way now, and you might have to do different routes, and you might have to do different ways of doing things. It's still valid, and it keeps that motivation, and I've always encouraged teams to galvanize through that again, to get that energy back from your vision, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you're right. You know, this has just been, goodness, if I had $1 for every time I've heard the word unprecedented in the last 6 months.
I'm using a new word now. I'm using the word extraordinary. It's my new
beautiful. I like it. But it is. And, you know, now more than ever, we need to be adaptable and, you know, change the things that we're doing and the plans that we had in place. But involving our people in those, coming up with new ideas and changing the way we do things to adapt to be able to achieve that vision is critical. Because, and, you know, I always say to my the leaders that I work with, you know, empowering our people is 50% them owning it, but it's also 50% you letting go, because, you know, you need to let go of the outcome. And while 5 and 5 makes 10, so does 8 and 2, and so does 7 and 3. So it doesn't matter how you get there or how your people get there, you'll still get to 10. So letting them come up with their own ideas, letting go and empowering them is critical. And then that blows on to building trust and connection as well. And, you know, if our people fail, you know, forgiveness and supporting. So, you know, it's all intrinsically linked as leaders. Yeah.
No, and I think you've shared some really sort of valuable lessons in terms of those principles, you know, love, environment, the health and well-being, and the language you use and the vision. And I think as leaders, and one sort of big takeaway and reminder for me today really is, you know, as much as you are a role model for our children, and we always talk about, you know, our children having been around good people to have good role models, I think we need to remind ourselves that we are our role models for our children, which we're probably more mindful of. But actually, the moment you step into your organization, whether on a Zoom call or in the room, people are looking, and they might not be consciously looking, but they're subconsciously looking. And I think, not that we have to be perfect, but just be mindful of what we're saying and how we're saying it and what we're doing in that. Because in fact, role modeling is probably more powerful than actually sometimes a training course or just telling somebody.
Absolutely.
It's inspirational leading and just seeing it happen, isn't it? I think.
And you know, there's a lot of pressure on leaders, and sometimes we don't get it right. And being able to say to your people when you don't get it right that you didn't, and say, you know, well, I made a mistake on this one. You know, what I've learned from it is this, and so, you know, let's find another way and move on. And that's really powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and people connect with that, because it says to your people, well, you know, he's human, he or she is human. So, you know, and that's okay. So I agree. It's really powerful stuff.
No, brilliant. Well, thank you for being on today. Thank you for sharing your insights from your book. I guess, where can people, if they want to connect with you, but also where can they get hold of the book if they want to go and purchase it?
Yeah, so connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to. I love connecting with people. So please reach out, say hi, and connect on LinkedIn. That you know, don't be shy. And you can buy my book through any online bookstore, so Amazon or I don't know if do you have Booktopia, or that might be an Australian thing. But any online bookstore, you should be able to search it and it'll be there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time and your sharing today, Wendy. Appreciate that.
That's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.